Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Good Intentions with Lisa-Tien. That is me. I'm going to try out the headphones today just to block out some sounds. Today I want to talk about ADHD. Something random happened at work earlier today and I was like, ooh, ADHD. Let's talk about it. So I wrote down some notes. So ADHD, if you guys don't know, is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADD is no longer a thing. It is all just ADHD. There's 3 different types. There's inattentive, hyperactive, and then hybrid. Behavioral symptoms can be aggression, excitability, fidgeting, impulsivity, irritability, lack of restraint, persistent repetitions of actions or words, cognitive, absent-mindedness, difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, hard to pay attention. Mood can be anger, anxiety, boredom, excitement. So ADHD people, we are just naturally lower in dopamine, which makes it harder to be motivated to do things. And I truly had no idea that I had ADHD. Let me see if I read everything that was on my notes. Yes, low in dopamine, which help regulate attention and motivation. So our brains are just wired differently. From some of the research that I have done whenever I got diagnosed, our brains process information differently. A lot of people don't love the name ADHD, like deficit, because it doesn't necessarily mean that we are deficit or have a disability. We are more so like we focus too much. Like there's like too much going on. It doesn't mean that we're any less than. It doesn't mean that we're, I had no idea that I had ADHD. I just remember there was this time period where I was getting my personal trainer certificate or studying to get my personal trainer certificate. And I don't know if it was also because I was in a toxic, abusive relationship where the environment was just very chaotic, but it was very hard for me to retain information. And so I was like, well, maybe I can just go to the psychiatrist and like try to get Adderall or something to get me through the program. Whenever I showed up, I thought that like I was going to have to lie about some of the symptoms. I think overall it just said that it was hard for me to focus and I'm getting this personal trainer certificate and it's hard for me to retain information. And if I'm getting ready for work in the morning and my husband at the time is like talking to me, it's hard to focus on what I'm doing and what he's saying. So generally, like that's just what I said my like symptoms were or whatever. And the psychiatrist asked me if I had ever looked anything up about ADHD. And I said, no. I mean, a little bit, but no. We did the testing. Don't know if it was just testing anxiety as well, but yes, turns out did not have to lie, did have ADHD. And I remember during the testing, like the way that they did the testing, it was kind of just like these worksheets to do, connect these dots or whatever. He'll ask me general questions based off of how quickly I answered or what the answer was, if it was right or if it was wrong. I remember in that moment of the testing, like starting to sweat a little bit. I'm like, oh shit, like I actually don't know one of the questions he asked, don't remember the question, but I remembered the actual answer like hours later. It was something about pop culture. The answer was Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. I think the question was like, whatever royalty person is dating someone in pop culture or whatever. When I got the actual diagnosis, I remember that was kind of a hard pill to swallow because I was like, wait, I'm different. Like when I thought of ADHD, well, ADHD shows up differently in people in general, but especially in men and women. A lot of women go undiagnosed with ADHD. So when I think of ADHD, I think of my roommate that I used to have. Very ADHD. She is the more hyperactive, where it's like where you're like fidgeting, like you can't sit still, talking really fast. Balance is also an issue as well. Like she would just always like bump into stuff or like trip over things. I also saw that, I'm not even going to mention that, but some people with ADHD get into car accidents more often. I don't think that's just ADHD related, but it might be like not being aware of your surroundings or whatever. But anyway, so when I thought of ADHD, that's just what I thought of. Like when you think back to school, it was very obvious the people that had ADHD, but I didn't realize there were different types, did not realize that I had it. So that was a hard pill to swallow, number one. Number two, when I got diagnosed and I was still with my ex at the time, I remember coming home and being very like kind of sad about it because I hadn't done much research. When you think of ADHD in the not in the definition, but in the name, it's attention deficit. So you're thinking deficit. So you're thinking, oh, I'm less than, or oh, my brain isn't the same as a neurotypical brain. What's wrong with me? And I came home to him telling him like, this is kind of like a lot to process. And he was in that moment supportive, surprisingly. But the next day, he came up to me and he was like, hey, so, I was just trying to be there for you yesterday about the ADHD diagnosis, but, you didn't really think about how this affects me. And I remember when he said that, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I just found out at 30 that my brain is different, that I process information differently, and you're making it about yourself. That's a narcissist for you. But leading up to this ADHD journey, I'm just going to talk about the relationship and the abuse for a little bit, and then we'll jump into more positive things. So he definitely made me feel like I had a disability. He was like, oh, like, yeah, ADHD, like you do. You like, I forget if he said, I forget the word, but legally, like you have a disability. And when you do more ADHD research, a lot of these people did say that they didn't realize that they had ADHD until they call it like adult ADHD or whatever. And so we're listening to TED Talks and this and kind of educating ourselves. And a lot of people say, oh, well, people with ADHD have trouble regulating their emotions. They have trouble communicating, which my ex said that our issue and why we were unhappy was always because I didn't know how to communicate properly. And so once the ADHD diagnosis was a thing, then the thing was no longer communication. It was the fact that I had ADHD. And because I have ADHD, I'm forgetful. I don't think of him all the time, this, that, or whatever. Like it became the scapegoat for our relationship failures. And the failure being it was my fault and that I made this commitment to be with him. Therefore, I should make these changes and he's going to change in his own way and as much as he can. But I have to pull up my end as well. And I remember just being really like, what the fuck? Like this just seemed very, it's abusive is what it was. But in that moment, I was just like, I didn't understand what was happening. And it also just made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And that's not me like being insecure. That's just the facts of what was happening was that he was using the ADHD and the symptoms and just who I am as a person, it being an issue because I'm not catering to him as much as he would like me to. But if I would point that out, that's, if you guys have seen Harry Potter, which movie is it? Can't remember the name of it, but we all know Lavender, right? Is that her name? Lavender, the girl that was obsessed with Ron and like tried to make a love potion for him and stuff like that. So I watched Harry Potter with my ex and the kids, and he brought up how he wished I was like her. I was like, wait, what? He was like, yeah, like how she's just, like just in awe and in love with him and is willing to do whatever for him. And I'm like, that's not normal and that's toxic. But that's what he was saying is what he would have wished me to be. So that just tells you narcissists want you to just make your life all about them and not about anything else. And they will say that's not what they want, but whenever they're not getting what it is that they want, even though they said that's not what they want, you're in for a fucking rude awakening. You're confused because they're saying this, but then at the same time they're saying, but not this. So anyway, that was it. That was the issue, was that I had ADHD. So therefore, I don't remember the things that he had said. Oh, he says he wants someone thoughtful, right? So because I'm not thinking of him all the time, therefore I'm not being thoughtful. And I'm forgetful. So then he feels like he can't trust me around the girls because he thinks that I will forget what to feed them or something. I don't know. This one time, I forget if it was before the ADHD. I'm gonna take these headphones off. Yeah, I forget if it was before the ADHD diagnosis or not, but regardless of when it was whenever he had a hip injury. He always had injuries, and coincidentally, things would act up whenever we were getting into arguments, and that was the manipulation, because then I can't ignore him, you know? So fucked up. So fucked up. Part of the manipulation, it was just, like if we're arguing too much and I need space, I can't have space because now he's injured and now I need to take care of him and think of him. So anyway, he had this hip injury, right? And the salon that I used to work at was over by where the girls live in their school. And so I offered to take the girls to school because his hip is hurting and it sucks for him to like have to sit down in the car or whatever. I was like, oh yeah, I can take them to school. The time that they need to be at school is a lot earlier than I need to be at work, because the salon that I worked at didn't open till 9, and school, I think they had to be there by like 7:30 or something like that. And I was like, I'll just bring all my stuff and I'll just get ready at work because I have a key. And I think we were also arguing before this as well. So he was very hesitant on allowing me to take the girls to school. And he said, I just feel like you might fuck it up. And when we talk about what he said, he told me that he said that in hopes that I would be like, you know what? Fuck you. I can do this. Like him saying, I feel like you're going to fuck it up was his way to motivate me to like not fuck it up. But it just caused me to have anxiety because I was like, well, now I can't fuck it up, right? Like nothing can go wrong. I can't be late. I can't do this. So waking up that morning on top of arguing the night before, me being all over the place and me being like, okay, I need to make sure I have everything. I need to make sure that the girls have everything. I need to make sure that we get there on time and that nothing goes wrong. I know the general direction of where the girls' school was. Okay. Also, in my mind, I'm like, we can't be late. Like, that's literally the only thing that I'm focusing or hyper focusing on, is the fact that we can't be late. So we get in the car. I thought that we had to get there before 7:30, but I think he had told me that before 7:30 is when the doors open at 7:30. So if it's before 7:30, the girls kind of just like stand outside and wait for the doors to open. Anyway, so a lot of misinformation. And this man has shown me the school before. The school year before this, he was like, hey, I want to take you And let me reiterate, this part is ADHD for me. So he said, I want to take you to the girls' school so you know where to drop them off and pick them up. Right? That's right in my mind, where to drop them off and pick them up. So I remember that day I had just come home from work, like sat in traffic. I was like, I really don't want to have to get in the car and drive back over in that direction because we lived in Lake Worth and the school and the salon is in Keller. And he was like, well, I feel like I should really show you where it is. That way you know where to drop them off and pick them up. And so that's what we did, right? I drove with him. He's like, we dropped them off right here and then we picked them up over on this side. And I was like, okay, cool, great. And so like, I'm also just on my phone, which he brought up. He was like, you didn't even take a picture of the girls' school, this, that, or whatever, or write down notes like you were just fucking around on your phone or whatever. Okay, so fast forward to this next school year where I'm offering to take the girls to school. And the ADHD is hyper focused on not being late. So when I got in the car, I realized, oh, I don't have the address. That's fine. I know in what direction it is. So I'm just going to start driving and then I'm going to call him and have him send me the address. Because I don't want to be late, right? And, okay, he has shown me where the girls' school was the last school year. So I start driving and I called him. He didn't answer. I called him again. He didn't answer. I was like, okay, whatever. Once we get over into that area, I'll just pull over and I'll just look up the girls' school name. They didn't know the name of their school. I remember it had something to do with like the country, like liberty or whatever. What's that fucking word? Something like patriotic. And I'm like, I'll just look up schools near me and then I will, when I see it, I'll know that that's the school. Get a little closer. I look up, none of the names of the schools are right by their mom's house or sound like what I'm trying to look for. And I'm like, oh shit. So then I call their mom. They didn't answer. And then finally, once we got like even closer over there, my ex called. He said, hey. I was like, hey, can you send me the name of the girls' school? I realized whenever I got into the car that I didn't have the address, but I didn't want to be late and I knew where it was. So I just drove. And he was like, it's blah, blah, blah. Put it in the maps, dropped them off, watched them go inside, left. And then he calls me and he is like, hey, did you drop the girls off? And I said, yeah. And he was like very upset that he called it. He said that I was going to fuck it up. And to him, I fucked it up because I did not prepare the night before to get all of the information needed to make sure that I take the girls to school without anything going wrong. We argued about this for I don't even know how many days. And it wasn't even just that day. This issue would constantly come up if he had a point to prove about how he can't depend on me, because he couldn't depend on me because I took the girls to school, but something went down. Like it wasn't a perfect nailed it type situation. To him, I fucked up because I didn't remember the name of the school, even though he prepared me that year before to let me know where to pick them up and drop them off. And I was like, well, I knew exactly where to drop them off and I know exactly where to pick them up. That is what you said. Yes, I just didn't remember the name of the school. And I never remember the name of the school. I've asked him several times over however many years that we have lived together. I just never remember it. And I never thought to just write it down because I could just ask again, right? But to him, it was an ordeal because he was like, well, what if I didn't answer the phone? You know, he said he looked down and saw all these missed calls. He thought that we got into a car accident. So now he's getting all anxious and blah, 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 blah. Like, what would have happened if he didn't answer the phone to let me know where the girls' school was or the name of the school? And I said, well, I would have just continued to Google schools near me and figured it out because I know the general area. Their school is right next to their mom's house. Whole fucking ordeal, right? So that is just another one of those things. And everything like ADHD related was like, I'm not a dependable partner. He can't depend on me. He doesn't trust me because of the ADHD symptoms, this, that, whatever. And the fact that I had that diagnosis and I'm kind of struggling with understanding what that meant, processing everything, and then he makes it about himself. And my friend or a roommate that had ADHD, there was this one time that we went out. It had been a while since we've gone out. And I think at this time she's married now. And let me tell you the amount of friends I've had or clients I've had that have like literally actually cried about my situation because they love me and they care about me. So we're having fun, having drinks, and I don't remember if anything. Oh, yes. Okay. So at this time period, my ex had given me an ultimatum, even though I'm the one that says that I don't want to be with him, but he's just had enough. And apparently he talked to his dad about the situation, and his dad had told him, well, there's one thing that you haven't done, which was to say, hey, I can't do this anymore if things don't change. So he had given me an ultimatum that if he doesn't see vast improvements in my behavior and in our relationship this next week, if he doesn't see that I am putting in all of the efforts possible to change, then he's going to file for divorce. And I remember when he told me this, I was like, well, again, I am going to do whatever I possibly can, but to you, if it's not perfect, if it's not everything that you're needing from me, then I accept that that is just what it is, and therefore we should get divorced. And I remember that was not a response that he wanted to hear. He wanted me to just fucking pull up my pants, buckle up, and like freaking go hard and prove myself to this person and do everything that I can to think about all of these things, to remember everything, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the ultimatum, and he was like, if you fuck up, or if something you do isn't up to par, then I'm going to have to file for divorce. So I forget why we decided. I think he said he was going to go out with one of his friends to like a Mavs game or something like that. And because he was out, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go have dinner with my old roommate at the time. So we had dinner at Baja and a margarita happened. And then we were like, oh, maybe we should go out. So I let him know, hey, we're going to go out to 7th Street. And he was like, I trust you. Be safe. Okay, cool. And this may have just been like a subconscious situation, but we go out, we drink, we actually end up leaving like early, I think around like 10 or something like that. And when we leave, so she's driving and she, I think, has my phone because I didn't bring like a little purse. So she was just holding on to my phone for me. And I could have texted him in the car, hey, by the way, we're heading back to her apartment, but I didn't. I was just thinking like, oh, I'll just wait until he lets me know that he's coming back home and then I'll go back home. So we get back to her apartment and we used to live together. So it was just like nostalgic in a way to be hanging out with her, and we drank, or we had drinks when we were out, and now we're like cozied up on the couch. And did we smoke? I forget, but I just remember, and I know this episode is supposed to be about ADHD, but I remember I just woke up out of nowhere. And when I woke up, I was like, fuck. When I woke up, it was like 4 a.m. or something like that. Tons of missed calls, text messages. I trusted you. Where are you? How could you do this to me? Blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, oh my God. I went back. We left 7th Street early. I went back to Renee's house. I was waiting on you to text me. I don't know why I didn't let you know that we're back at her place, blah, 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 blah. I'm so sorry. And he was just like, that's it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I deserve so much better, blah, 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 blah. Like, you need to come pack up your stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing that right now. I'm a little hungover. I'm going back to sleep and then I'll head back over there in a couple hours. But he kept like blowing up my phone, like, no, you need to come now. You need to come now, blah, blah, blah. Or I'm going to throw your stuff out on the street or sidewalk or whatever he said. And I remember the drive home, I'm blasting music and I just feel like this sense of, oh my God, it's fucking over. So I'm telling this story. I'm now remembering why am telling this story is because when we were out, my friend is pleading with me, as most of my friends and clients have, like literally looking at me with genuine concern. And she's crying, and I hope I don't start crying right now, but she's crying and she was like, you have to leave him. She was like, it's so fucked up that he treats you the way that he does and that he puts you down for like ADHD. She was just like, it's not right. And sorry, I just love my friends and I love like how much they love me, but she was just like, you've changed so much. You used to be outgoing and bright and happy, and you're not that person anymore. And she was like, and I know it's because of him. And she herself has been in an abusive relationship as well. So of course, like, she knows. Everyone knows like who I was before him and how different I became. And whatever excuses I told myself as to why I'm different. But when you're in a relationship with someone like that, because they are so manipulative, they just, and because you love and you care about this person, and the abuse doesn't necessarily feel like abuse because they're not being physical, they're really good at convincing you that you're the issue or this, that, or whatever. And I believe on top of ADHD, harder to understand or process like what is going on. And I'll get to that. So I remember driving home and I was just like, oh my God, like, it's fucking over. It's over. Like, he's finally letting me go. But I come in, one of his friends is passed out on the couch. He said he you know, before I started driving there, he was like, where do you want your stuff? In the garage or on the driveway? And I was just like, in the garage, I guess. And when I got back to the house, like, nothing, he didn't move anything. I walk into the bedroom and I think either he's on the floor, maybe he's in bed, like under the covers. So when I'm driving home with this sense of liberation, it completely changed when I saw him in bed under the covers crying. Because now it's, oh shit, I did something that's hurting this person. You know, I have never done something like that before. And I don't know if it's just this subconscious thing where it was like, oh, he gave me an ultimatum and I don't necessarily want to be in this relationship. Like, I love him. I care about him. I would want to be in this relationship if things were actually different and if he was different, but it's not, right? So a part of me knew my truth, but I believe it's the ADHD where you have ADHD brain, like, you only kind of think of the now. So it's hard sometimes to like prepare for the future or remember in this instance. Okay, so I'll give like a little quick example. When I lived with him in Lake Worth, we would do our grocery shopping at Walmart, which I just don't like Walmart. I feel like the produce is trash, right? And I like to get strawberries to eat with my yogurt or whatever as a snack. Every week I would get strawberries. And every week when I prep the strawberries and take it to work and take a bite into the strawberry, I remember, oh, their strawberries suck. Stop buying strawberries at Walmart. But every week I would be like, oh yeah, I got to get strawberries. That is literally ADHD. And because I'm not doing something, like I'm not writing down like a reminder or whatever to remind myself that the strawberries at Walmart suck, to stop. So like you're only in the now. So whenever I'm walking around and I'm like going back over my list and I'm making sure I have everything, I'm like in the now, like, oh yeah, I got to get strawberries, instead of, oh wait, the strawberries suck here, right? So pulling on back, I'm not remembering that like I don't want to be in this relationship. It's time to get out of this relationship. In the now, I just see my partner, someone that I love, someone that I care about, is so distraught. And the reason he is that way is because of my behavior and my actions, right? So now, instead of packing up my shit, which was what I thought I was going to do, and I even asked my roommate, hey, do you have work today? And if you don't, can you help me move my stuff? And she was going to let me stay at her apartment until I figured shit out, right? The plans completely changed when I saw him crying and being upset, right? And he's just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. He's like, just so hurt. And so, like, he felt like I'm doing this on purpose to hurt him. Like, I purposely did not call him. I purposely am not trying. I'm purposely not putting in effort. Like, I'm just fucking with his emotions. Like, he was crying out, like, how could you do this to me? First of all, you know how I feel about 7th Street. And what did I say? I said, I trust you. Be safe. Like, I trusted you that you were going to be responsible. And then you don't even let me know when you left, and blah, blah, blah. And there's that communication argument and this, that, or whatever. And he's just saying, I deserve better than this. Like, I can't do this anymore. I have to have self-worth. And I'm apologizing now. Like, I'm so sorry. I know, blah, blah, blah. Like, this one thing I genuinely felt bad about, because yes, I did not communicate. And you know what? I had an ex-boyfriend that would do that, where he wouldn't communicate that he made plans, or he's going here, he's going there. And there were a few times when he has done something when he was drunk that was very questionable or scary. And because of the lack of communication, I started to get nervous, and I'm like, okay, well, what if he got into a car accident, or what if this happened, or what if that happened, blah, 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 blah. So I knew how that felt in that moment, because I was on that side with an ex-boyfriend. So I genuinely felt so terrible. And I'm forgetting about the fact that, like, I want to be done. I want to be done. And that's just how it is. I think that people with ADHD are more prone to addiction. We're more prone to substance abuse. We're more prone to being in relationships like this, because it's hard to like process, because our brain, the way it's wired, the way that information is coming in, what we're sensing, it's just like a lot. So in the now, all I see is, oh, this person that I love and I care about is crying and he's hurt. And I don't remember where in the month or in the timeline that this situation happened. I know that we were seeing a marriage counselor at this point. We saw one in person, didn't like her. We saw another one that my therapist recommended. He didn't like her. We actually saw her twice. He didn't like her, called her a bitch. So then we found this one, Dr. Hume, which was a man, which he doesn't like therapists in general, doesn't respect the profession, but he had said that this was probably one of the best counselors that we have seen. But I don't know if that was a lie. Anyway, we had a few sessions with him individually, and actually my ex didn't like him either because he was gay, and he does talk about himself in his situations, whether it's with his partner or his son, which was his dog, but some sexual things would come up if we're talking about sex, and I think my ex might just be either a homophobe or a closeted gay person. There's a lot to unpack there, but he did not like that counselor after a while. Anyway, yeah. So that was the whole thing. We're talking about fucking ADHD and tangents. So my roommate at that time has ADHD, was the very typical type of ADHD. When you think of ADHD, her symptoms is what I've always thought. And the fact that my partner is putting me down for this, that, or whatever, she's crying. And, you know, I think I was still with him for another year, maybe another year and a half after that. But seeing him hurt, so now we're getting sucked back into the trauma bond because I can't break away from the fact that just because he's hurt doesn't mean that I necessarily have to do anything about it. But now I'm hyper focused, and it's the trauma bond of being way too overly empathetic and not knowing how to detach from other people's emotions. Like, what other people are feeling, those are their feelings. Like, I'm not hurt. I think this happens because people like us who are empathetic or whatever, something in our childhood, obviously the sexual abuse happened. So now you don't want to see other people hurt, period. But also, like, you would never want to hurt someone else. So when I see that this person that I love and care about is hurt because of my quote unquote actions, now I am taking that on as like my responsibility or whatever, when that is just not. Okay, how someone else feels, how they react or whatever, that's on them. That's their responsibility. So if I walked by someone and just like smiled and they get upset that I didn't say hi or something, that doesn't have anything to do with me, right? That's just like a little example. So then now we get wrapped back into this continuous trauma bond and manipulation and stuff like that. And because of the ADHD, yes, it's very like, you're not planning, you're not thinking of the future, you're just in the now. And also you don't learn your lesson. As the strawberries example, I am not learning the lesson of, oh, this keeps happening and I feel like I'm not doing anything to hurt this person, but they keep feeling hurt and they keep putting me down and they keep making it my issue, when I know in my heart and soul, my brain, my body, that it's not my issue. And everyone else that I am talking to understands that it's also not my issue, and they're telling me it's not my issue, it's him, he needs help, he needs this. But instead of learning that lesson that I am feeling in my body and that I'm telling myself and that my therapist is telling me and that the psychiatrists are telling me and that other people around me who are my friends, my support system, my clients are also telling me, I am just listening to this one person. The only person who is telling me the opposite of what I know and what everybody else knows, because of the trauma bond or the manipulation or whatever the fuck. But it wasn't just him. His dad, I absolutely adore his dad. He is a very sweet man. I believe that the two marriages that he was in, I don't know if both wives were narcissists, but I know that both marriages were very toxic. And I believe he is just a type of person that is kind of like an enabler. He doesn't, similar to me. So in our relationship dynamic, before my ex and I even went to therapy, he would say, if you told me there's a good therapist out there, I would call you a liar. My dad feels the same way about blah, 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 blah. So before we went to therapy, we were using his dad as, I forget the word, not neutralizer, but mediator, basically. So the two of us would call him on a Sunday and talk about our issues. We would talk to him together, and then we would by ourselves talk to him on our own. And in the beginning, when I was talking to him on my own, he was very supportive of what I was saying. He would say, your truth, the right answer is the right answer. So if you feel like to you the right answer is for you to leave this relationship, then that's just the right answer. Right? So he was very supportive, but after time went by, it felt like he was more supportive of my ex, which I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's his son. So, of course, I remember feeling very confused, but it is what it is. But then at one point, it just felt like the two of them were ganging up on me when it came to the whole ADHD. Like, we sat down, he's on the phone. They're saying that, ADHD is a disease, not a disease, but it is a dis-ease. So it's causing disruption or whatever it may be to the people around me. It was like they're trying to give me an intervention of me having ADHD, and like the fact that I needed to accept that I have a problem and either to be medicated, which neither of them wanted me, and it doesn't matter if they wanted me to or not, but they weren't really like pro medication, or at least my ex wasn't. But they were like, I don't know, maybe you do need to be on medication. That way, like, the difference of what being medicated is like, and then eventually like wean off on it, and like I would have like my brain would have connected in a way to where I now know, okay, like I'll write down notes now, or I'll do this now, or I'll do that now, or whatever coping mechanisms. Like, a whole other fucking argument was laundry, and how since I've moved in, I told this man, I want to do my own laundry. Don't do my laundry. I want to do it on my day off, and then I will put it up on that day off because I have mentally prepared myself to do laundry. If you do my laundry, thank you, that's great, but I'm not going to put it up when you want me to put it up. That was a whole fucking argument because he was like, I'm doing your laundry for you. Why can't you just take the 3 seconds or however long to put it up? Why do you have to leave it out? And I'm like, I don't want to do it right now. So thank you for doing my laundry, but I didn't ask you to. And actually, I specifically said, please don't do it. So this whole laundry fucking thing was a whole ordeal, right? And then at some point we've decided that he's just going to do the laundry or whatever. And then I don't know, I woke up one morning with earlier than usual and I just wanted to be productive, so I started the laundry, and that was a whole fucking ordeal because I didn't do it the way that he would, which the way that he would was he would grab everyone's laundry and throw it on the floor and make 3 piles so each load had the same amount of laundry, right? Because I didn't do that. I don't want to throw the clothes on the floor. I will visually see the amount of clothes and visually see how much it's going to fill up the wash. And then each load will about kind of be the same, guesstimating wise. And that, I'm telling you guys, was a whole fucking like, he felt so disrespected. He felt so distraught. He felt like, oh, I don't listen to him. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. I'm going back on what I said. Like, is this sounding crazy right now? Because that was my life. And it was the whole ADHD thing, because that's when then we called his dad, and it was a whole like, well, okay, maybe you should write it down, and y'all agreed that he would do the laundry, so then you shouldn't be doing it, and blah, 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 blah. Like, oh my God. I almost threw up like that. Crazy, right? So, ADHD, you can get it if one of your parents has it, or it is like a trauma response to something that happened. And because I never knew that I had ADHD until that time in my life, I wasn't sure if I actually had it or if it was a trauma response or if the symptoms were just a lot worse because I was in a toxic, abusive relationship that was very unstable. And if you're walking on eggshells, your brain is overworking itself to keep you from being in danger, basically. So my brain is overworking, overthinking about how he's going to react, or should I say this? Should I do that? And if I don't, what could potentially happen? Blah, blah, blah. So I agreed with him. I did feel like I was very forgetful. I did feel like I was all over the place. Maybe I didn't remember things the way that they actually happened because my brain literally just felt like a blur even when I did take the medication. So they had me on Ritalin first, and I feel like it definitely helped. But there were some times when I felt like just really overly stimulated. So then they switched me to Adderall, and then now I'm on Vyvanse. But I think in that time I felt overly stimulated because I was overly stimulated. Like my brain was just overly stimulated all the time. And I didn't truly accept the fact that I did have ADHD. Not that it, because of anything negative, it was just I didn't have the space to think about like my feelings, how my what I'm thinking, how my body is feeling. Now that I am not in that environment anymore, like I know when I'm about to start my period, I know when I'm about to ovulate, like I know based off of how I feel in my body, what my skin looks like, if I'm having more cravings, I am more aware of myself. And that's how it should be. So now that I have that space, I am very ADHD as fuck. As fuck. And I've noticed that one of my best friends since the fourth grade, she also has ADHD, undiagnosed. But now that I'm aware of like how I am, and I can actually look and focus and think about like other people, not just this partner that I was with, and be observant and, you know, make information and guesstimations and whatever, I can tell when someone else is also ADHD. And I feel like my friendships with the people who are ADHD or just neurodivergent in general, like we are just on a completely different level. We are more chaotic. I feel like when we are together, we're cackling, we're blah, like a word that people would use to describe me in high school is like everyone's like, oh, you're wild, oh, you're crazy. But I think that's just the ADHD because I am just, whatever I think I'll say if I think it's going to be funny. And even if it is crazy or wild or whatever, like it is raunchy, if it is sexual, I don't care. Like I just say it. I won't ever say anything mean. I don't like that. But I don't feel shame or get embarrassed about the things that I say. It is what it is, and I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it. And that just, but anyway, I'm very aware now with the ADHD. It makes complete sense. So I didn't think I had it, obviously. I've said that a million times, but like in school, I was always in honors classes. But it all makes sense now. If I'm like math and science are not interested in, have always been difficult. Don't know how I was in honors classes in those cases actually, but didn't love it, cheated, didn't understand. Once I got to community college, I noticed that like I didn't give a shit about school. If it's not a class that I actually cared about, which the only class that I did care about for the few semesters that I went to TCC was psychology. Everything else, like biology, was so hard. I dropped that class, I think, like once, and then I just stopped going another time because I actually ran out of all my drops. Like I was thinking about this today. Like, another thing with ADHD is you're very impulsive. So I would impulsively skip school. I would drive to school and sit there, and if I'm early, I would just, like, in my head have an argument with myself, like, should I just go in? Oh no, maybe you should just leave, just go tanning, blah blah blah. And like, on a whim, that's just impulse, like, same with drinking, as you just feel, either you feel overly stimulated or you feel understimulated. So I always felt really uncomfortable if I didn't have a drink in my hand of some sort. So I would down beverages, dopamine, coffee, I would chug that dopamine, taking shots. Oh, let's do another one. Dopamine, weed, dopamine. Oh, let's take another hit. Oh, let's take another hit. Oh, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Dopamine, dopamine. I do feel way more productive whenever I do take a Vyvanse. Also, diet, sugars, dyes from whatever, like candy and stuff like that, affect ADHD symptoms. Sleep affects ADHD symptoms. Your phone being on social media, doom scrolling, that's dopamine, that affects your ADHD symptoms. Watching TV affects your ADHD symptoms. All of these things affect your ADHD symptoms. So I wonder where my brain health or whatever would be once I kind of hone in and get rid of a lot of these distractions or dopamine, because I notice that my brain, or I just feel way more all over the place if I stayed up, not necessarily late, around like midnight, but if I stayed up because I was watching reels on Instagram, when I wake up the next day, I feel like, how do I get it together? Right? So, everything ADHD, I feel like it is very beneficial if you do your own. Well, if you feel like you have it, okay, go get diagnosed. I think a lot more people have it than they realize, especially women. It goes unnoticed because when you think of ADHD, you think of someone that is hyper or whatever, but sometimes that you might not be hyper because you're feeling anxious. And I think some women get misdiagnosed with anxiety when they have ADHD. So that's also just something to think about. Just educating yourself, watching other people's stories on YouTube, watching, listening to podcasts. I felt like that helped me understand, process, and be more accepting as well. I think it's really good to know and to educate, because then you're not wondering what's wrong with you. My second psychiatrist that I saw told me, she was like, if you're not taking your medication every day, then you don't need medication. And whatever. Like, she was like, if it's not affecting your life, because some people have the ADHD where they lose stuff, like they forget stuff, which, you might forget that you have to pick up your kids at school or whatever. You might forget that the candle's on or this, that, or whatever. Like, or because the symptoms are so bad that you have like a hardcore addiction to gambling or whatever. So just being educated and being aware of how your brain is, how you're feeling in your body is very crucial. And just helps with self-acceptance. Like, there isn't anything wrong with us. We don't have a disability. We don't have a deficit of any sort. Our brains are different. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think ADHD is a superpower. We are more spontaneous. We are energetic. We are lively. We can hyperfixate on things. So that makes us very passionate about things that we actually love. And you're more motivated to do whatever it is that you love. Like, a few times someone had told me, I really like how passionate you are about music or about whatever. And I have never thought of it as passion. I just, I love electronic music. I love DJs. Like, I love, like, I love food. I love just loving things is fun for me. Dopamine. And being aware is also important. And I noticed, you know, I wasn't taking the medication. I had some saved up. Like I didn't ever really take it. And when I realized, oh, I'm not performing well in life, I feel like I perform and I thrive when I have a set schedule and stability. So in the past, when I worked two jobs, I felt like that's when I thrived because I had a set schedule. I worked at the salon on these days, and on these nights, I worked at a restaurant waiting tables. And because I knew what every day was going to be like, I had a set schedule. Like this day, I'm going grocery shopping. This day, I'm going to meal prep. This day, I have time for my hobbies. And I, it was great. It was fucking awesome. But since I now am at a new salon where I'm building my clientele, every day is a little different. And I remember instead of doing things that I might want to do or should do, like reading or whatever, I would just be like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to smoke and watch TV because I don't know if I get to do this again. Like, I don't know if this is going to be the only day that I get to do absolutely nothing. And then I end up doing absolutely nothing multiple times a week because I'm getting like anxiety or whatever, feeling unsafe or unsure about my schedule, that now I'm smoking or eating an edible to like chill, but then I chill too much and I'm not doing anything. But I think that I realize now that I mean, I ate half an edible last night, but I don't keep them here. I don't want it to be a habitual thing. And since I haven't had it around for a while, I noticed that when I sit down to watch TV, so in my head, I'm like, oh, I love to sit down and binge watch 8 hours of TV. That's like my favorite thing to do. I only do that when I've smoked or if I'm eating, then I enjoy to watch TV. When eating is over, I notice that like I can't sit still. Like I'm like, okay, my brain is like, what else should I do? Should I do something else? Should I do blah 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 blah? And my brain is just fucking all over the place. So then I would eat more so that my brain could slow down, so that I could just sit here, enjoy the food, and watch TV. And it's just so crazy to me how unaware I was of all of this. But now that I have this space to reflect and think about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what is my brain like, awareness is everything. Because when you're aware, you know where you can change or make changes if you want to change. If you're not aware and you want to change, you don't know where to fucking begin. And then you don't start because you're anxious and you don't know where to start. So then you just don't do it. Was that all just like ADHD as fuck? Because I feel like I was very like all over the place, and hopefully it makes sense. I think it did. Yeah. I'm gonna say I love ADHD. So whenever I did the research about ADHD and relationships and stuff, I started to realize, oh, maybe my ex-boyfriend actually had ADHD and we just didn't know, on top of whatever issues. But I think that's why we vibe together so well. Like he and I were friends first. Well, everything happened very quickly in that whole relationship anyway, which is I think also an ADHD thing, is when you meet someone who you vibe with, you're like, "Oh my god, I really like this person." So everything with him just like fucking flowed because we were very similar. I would remember saying that with him, I can talk to him about anything and it just felt like I was talking to one of my best friends. And there were some things that happened in the relationship that I don't know, maybe it caused me to have anxiety and I didn't really know how to process that. But on top of, we weren't really communicating at all. There wasn't good communication, and things just didn't work out. But it's not a deal breaker, and I was saying this in my Instagram story the other night. It's not a deal breaker that if I meet someone that they don't have ADHD, but I feel like ADHD people together have more fun. I'm not going to say that I want my partner to have ADHD. I'm just going to maybe not, whatever, just the vibes, right? So, yes, if you are anxious, if you feel like it's really hard for you to get into a routine, or you feel like you have a motivation problem, or you just feel overwhelmed or underwhelmed or racing thoughts, you can't go to sleep because you're overthinking everything, you can't, whatever, you might have ADHD. I'm not out here diagnosing people. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but it's good to look into, do your own research, and see a psychiatrist if you have to. If you feel like you can't do shit in life, could be one of the reasons. There are, aside from stimulant medication, there's also non-stimulant medication where it takes longer, but it's supposed to help your brain waves, or the way that information travels in your brain, to like actually connect and go where it needs to go. There's also nootropics. I used to take this one, don't remember what it's called, but they were like these red capsules, and I bought it from a store online in Austin. There's like vitamins or supplements that you can take that's supposed to help. I would just read the ingredients and look up reviews, because a lot of like focus medication really just has caffeine in it, and caffeine, it's not, it works for some people, but it's not the end all be all, because sometimes you have a crash. I know lion's mane was a really big nootropic thing. I used to take that as well. But honestly, before taking something, I would kind of just be aware of like where you are at. Are you sleeping well? Do you have quality sleep? Are you sleeping early? What is your diet like? Are you eating a bunch of sugars? Are you eating, I think it's mostly just sugars. Those are probably some of the first steps. And then, yeah, do your research about ADHD, see psychiatrists if you feel like you can't function. But if you feel like you're fine, behavioral things like writing down a schedule, a routine, something to check off, I feel like that also is like a dopamine boost that can help. Journaling, I feel like, or just like slowing down, doing like a 10-minute meditation, 15-minute meditation can also help first thing in the morning. Are you drinking water? I mean, these are things that I don't do, so it's like I want to, but I don't do it because I have ADHD. So instead of sleeping early, I'm like, I'm gonna keep my fucking eyes pried open to watch this next episode, even though I'm literally falling asleep. But, whatever. If you want to, you would. And if I really wanted to, I would make it happen. We just love learning lessons in a very slow way. But anyway, that's that. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully I wasn't like all over the fucking place, but yeah, it is a beautiful day today. Very cold, but yes, thank you guys for listening. I will talk to y'all next time. Bye.